So let's get right into it. I'm going to discuss a very strange topic. So I did a couple of videos on Orgone, and when I did the video, when I did the vlogs on the Orgone, there's a couple of reasons. Um, One, because I've been fascinated by Wilhelm Reich, Dr. Wilhelm Reich, and I've been studying his work for a very long time. So it's Dr. Wilhelm Reich. And I've been studying his work for a very long time. Dr. Wright was jailed by the American government, and he died in prison right before he got released mysteriously. And the box that you see to the left is what he is a box that he constructed with layers of very simple. It's a very simple. What's the word I'm looking for? Concept where he put different materials. He layered different materials. So he was layering materials of basically inorganic and organic materials. So he was layering. He would take a layer of, like, let's say, cotton, and then steel, and then cotton and steel and cotton and steel, right? So and then he layered those into that box, and then he covered them with wood, and then made a box. And what he discovered was in this box, because it would collect energy, right? Would collect in this box, and he called it orgone energy, right? And he discovered that by putting these materials in proximity to each other in very tight configurations, uh, it's just like sort of like radon gas in your house, right? Or something like that. In a building, it collects. Well, what he discovered was that this orgone energy will start to collect around certain materials when you compile them into certain configurations. Really simple, right? The secrets of the universe are so simple that they will fool most people, right? And so what he discovered was a very, simple secret in the universe, quantum physics. When we started getting into dabbling into quantum physics, and so I was fascinated by this simple, I mean, because like, I'm not the smartest person in the world, so if I can figure something out, I'm like, wow, this is fucking amazing. Particularly because it was so simple, and then also, working with it. So anyway, so Wilhelm Reich, he made that box, and he would cure people. He allegedly, I have to say allegedly, would allegedly cure people of cancer and of other things by just sitting in the box. And he said, well, this is impossible. But Wilhelm Reich was a celebrated scientist. And if you go back and look at his work, he's written many books. He was a psychiatrist who then got into science, right? And so he wasn't, necessarily the quack that they make him out to be. Now, so I was fascinated by Reich, and he also developed, like Africans. Africans kill me because like, they were like, oh, there's drought in Africa, and I was thinking to myself, you know, like they say, oh, the country has drought and we're starving, and we got to go to America. Well, Wilhelm Reich built this device that you're looking at back, I think about almost 100 years ago, at this point, right? And a very simple device to make it rain. He called it a cloud buster. You know what I mean? And so people say, oh, these people are so smart and different things. I'm just like, well, you're so smart. Why you can't figure out how to make it rain in where you live at if there's a drought? Particularly if there's people like Wilhelm Reich who figured it out, how to build very simple devices to make it rain like 100 years ago, right? And so, I'm like, and but yeah, so I find it interesting. Like when people say, "Oh, it's a drought." Well, Reich developed he developed the cloud buster to make it rain, and he developed that box. Two very simple inventions that a 12, not even a 12th grader, a 10th grader could make, right? That somebody in a 10th grade science class could make, and he figured out how to cure cancer and make it rain, allegedly, right? Even and these experiments were documented, but I'm gonna still say allegedly, right? You can go look it up for yourself if you care. Right now, so Reich was a fascinating man. Um, Orgone comes from the term orgasm, right? And so, but I'm not gonna get too deep into that because that's not what this is about. So, but anyway, so my study of Wilhelm Reich and his inventions and his life story, which is fascinating. I don't see why somebody didn't make a movie out of it. You know, had led me just from studying Reich. You know, looking like a mad scientist right here. I'm kind of a mad scientist myself, so I like mad scientists. And so Reich. Um, oh, also, well, this is what I wanted to get at. So after making these devices, on one account, when Reich activated the he activated the cloud buster to make it rain and did make it rain, right? Articles in the newspaper said he made it rain, you know. And so, like I said, I don't understand why people are running all across the planet when they say, oh, it's a drought, when a man showed you how to make it rain 80 years ago. And if you're so smart, how come you know what I mean, you didn't read that? Nobody, you don't know that. You know, like people say, oh, these people are so smart and all these different groups. You know, and particularly they come to America and say like niggers are stupid and stuff like that. And I'm thinking to myself, well, anyway, you can't figure out how to make it rain in your country so that you can have a, flourishing farm. But anyway, so Wilhelm Reich, when he activated his cloud buster and made it rain, um, they said that there were UFOs showed up. So I always thought that was interesting. Like people reported that there were UFOs that showed up in the vicinity when he activated the cloud busters and made it rain. And which is fascinating. Another fascinating aspect, and that's what I want to talk about. So, because that's what this is about. So, the first time, my first experience with orgone. So, I want to talk about my experience. Well, a couple of things. So, orgone, my experience with orgone and Wilhelm Reich. And so, um, my first experience with orgone, I actually made an orgone pyramid, right? And basically on using the concept of basic people, I saw people doing this, and I said, so they said based on the concept of Reich taking materials, compacting those materials, and putting them into shape, a certain geometric shape. So then you're dealing with sacred geometry, the pyramids, the pyramidal shape being a sacred shape that can direct power, right? And so I wanted to experiment with that because I was like, wow, this really seems really simple. It's fascinating. I love Reich. I love his concepts. Um, I love studying his concepts. I think it's fascinating. And so I started to basically compile make me one of these. I wanted to make an orgonite pyramid, right? And supposedly pseudoscience. So, um, but I just thought it was fascinating. And also, I thought the pyramids were cool. I thought it'd be cool to make like a mock pyramid, like the ones in Egypt. And so I decided, I said, let me make some orgone. So I made a piece. It was a big piece too. I made a big one. It was about, not, bigger than the ones you see on your screen. The one I made was about maybe a foot and a half, about a foot and a half, and maybe about 4 inches wide, around, maybe 4 foot, about 4 inches around, about a foot and a half tall, and using different materials, but using the blueprint, from Wilhelm Reich, which is very simple. I mean, it's just, basically, metal, layers of metal, inorganic and organic items, right? Or thing, materials. So like steel and like let's say wool, right? Layers of like wool, a layer of steel, layer of wool, layer metal, wool, crystals, different things, right? And just putting them together and compiling them, and then you can make them into beautiful configurations like these pyramids, and also crystals and copper. And so I was like, oh, okay. If any, I was like, well, I'll try this and just test it, and then if if nothing else, I'll have a cool ass piece that I can just sit on my living room table. A cool ass conversation piece. Like, what is that? What is that big ass pyramid? It's nice. Oh, that's my orgone, whatever, right? And but also would give me a chance to use it to test it to see, you know, what what is orgone? Is it actually collecting this energy? Is this energy attracted to these materials? And then it gives me a chance to like kind of test it out, right? Play around with it, and it's simple to make, right? So and then it's very crafty. So if you're a person that likes art and craft, it kind of allows you to kind of play around with stuff, right? And tinker and whatever. So anyway, so I actually made a pyramid, and I think I was in Georgia at the time, and then I had a weird experience, right? So and I it probably maybe it was a coincidence, but it made me think about it when I was doing this vlog on Reich, and so I had a weird experience with the when I made the orgone, and I never really talked about it too much. I don't think I talked about it too much, but since I started doing the vlogs on Orgone, Orgonite, and in Reich, um, it made me think about that experience that I had. So I figured I'd talk about that in reference to the Orgone, particularly because uh, there was a story where Reich, when he activated the cloud buster to make it rain, the UFOs showed up. And so when I made the Orgonite, um, I don't know what I call it, the Orgonite piece, to test. I think I had it. What did I do with it? I made it. Came out really nice, and I put like magnets in it and crystals and different layers of metal and different things and cotton and all that. And it was really a cool piece, cool pyramidal type piece, and it looked really cool. And so they and also somebody said, you listen to all these videos and different people said that it actually I think somebody said it repels some aliens are allergic to orgone energy, something like that. Who knows, right? So I just heard a lot of weird stuff in my study of orgone. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of weird stories, like the death of Wright, allegedly the aliens, at the cloud busters, et cetera, right? So fascinating story. So so but anyway, so I made this piece of orgone that I wanted to test and play around with it, and so after having it for a while, I put it. They said you should put the orgone like you can put it like in your room where you sleep. It's good, the energy that if it collects is healthy for you and stuff like that. So, or you can put it under your bed, stuff like that, right? So, um, and it'll collect good energy and it'll help heal you and and keep you healthy, stuff like that. So I'm like, okay. So I think I put it under my bed. I had it like under my bed for a while just to see what happened. And so I don't know if it's a coincidence, but I had a dream. Well, I don't know. I guess it was a dream, right? And this dream was so crazy. I remember it to this day, but I didn't I've never written it down ever. I mean, I do write down my dreams, but this dream I never in my life wrote down because it was so crazy. To this day I remember it. And so what I did was, what happened was, one night I had a dream, and alien abduction dream. Long story short, right? I had an alien abduction dream, and but it wouldn't. But so, and in the dream or experience, right? But I marked it up as a dream, and and like I said, I don't know if the Oregon thing was just a coincidence, or what? Because at the time, I wasn't really writing my dreams down. I wasn't. It was, matter of fact, what's funny. Right after that, I started writing down dreams, and the girl I was dating at the time, me and her had just started dating, and she was kind of the catalyst for that. Like it all started like later, a little later, maybe a couple of months after we started dating, maybe 6 months. And so right when we started dating, I had met her, and so yeah, so in the dream, before I forget or get off track, so in the dream, um, I was sleep in my bed, and all of a sudden, I couldn't move. I had one of those experiences where they say that what is it? What do they call it? Like I was paralyzed, like like I couldn't move or whatever, right? And but I was awake, and I realized that there were people in my room, or humanoids, and they took me. They put me on they put me on like a stretcher, and then they rolled me out of the room, and I just remember them taking me somewhere. And I don't remember much after that. I just remember them bringing me back, put me in my bed, and then I woke up the next morning. And when I woke up the next morning, I remembered the dream. And in the dream, though, they weren't aliens. See, here's the kicker. I'm calling it alien abduction because it happened like an alien abduction, but what happened was um, they were, I remember them. I remember clearly. Like I said, I never forgot. I never wrote it down, but I never forgot. They had on, you ever see that, you ever see those movies where like, it's like a, what do you call it? Like a virus outbreak. They had on those, what the fuck do they call them? Contamination suits. I don't know if that's the real name, but just say for the sake of this story, contamination suits. You know what I'm talking about. And so they had on these contamination suits with goggles. You know what I mean? Like I had a virus or something, right? Like you go in a hospital, or like radiation suits, something like that, right? They had these like radiation suits with goggles, so I couldn't see their faces or whatever. I just knew they had, two legs, two arms. I mean, if you got on goggles, obviously you got two eyes, I guess, right? You got goggles on for a good fucking reason. So, or you wouldn't have the goggles on, right? So, I'm assuming they had two legs, two arms, two eyes, and they were, humanoid and tall. And so they took me and put me on the stretcher, and then boom, you know what I mean? Like I don't even know how they got my room. Obviously nothing was broken into or whatever, right? And so they were just. I woke up. I was there. I mean, I could. They were there. I woke up, from sleep. I realized they was in my room. I was paralyzed. They took me. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. I couldn't talk. They put me on the stretcher or whatever it was, and they, got my, rolled me out, and then I passed out. I woke back up. I remember them putting me back in the bed, kind of bringing me, being in the house, obviously brought me back. And then I went to sleep, and then I woke up I was out, knocked out, and I woke up the next morning. And I was like, what the fuck? That was the weirdest dream I've ever had. Mind you, well, I had a dream like that I had dreams like that when I was a kid. I was about maybe, I don't know, maybe 8 years old, 9 years old, eight or nine. I used to be petrified of the dark, and I used to always have dreams of like these beings coming in my room, and it was so crazy. Like my mom used to take me. I think it got so crazy. I remember. I think she took me to a counselor. You know what I mean? Because I was petrified of the dark, and I was scared to death at night. Like I would be scared of the dark because they would always come at night, and so I was scared. So when I was a little kid, I had those dreams, you know, and but that was the only time I can remember ever having that kind of experience. And then, like I said, and so then fast forward, I was an older guy, when this happened. I was probably in my, I was probably like, I was much older. Let's just say that, much older. You know? So yeah, so that was the only kind of times I really had those kind of dreams. And but this time I had made that orgone and that piece of orgonite, and that's when it happened, right? And so I just thought that was a weird coincidence, right? Particularly when people said right when he used the orgone cloud buster, he said the UFO appeared over the cloud buster. But this was in the daytime, when this happened. The story with Reich and his crew. And so, yeah, I thought that was fascinating. So, anyway, I don't want to make this too long, but yeah, that was just a weird experience I had with orgone. I guess you could say orgonite, orgone, and aliens, right? So, but and so yeah, so definitely check out some of the tests I've been doing. If you're into that kind of thing. So, but I'm into quantum physics, UFOs, aliens, different things. Not just I do. If you notice, a lot of my stories are current events, like where I comment on current events. But if you go and look, there's a lot of other stuff too, right? So, and sometimes I get bored with that shit because these people are kind of predictable. At this point, it's predictable, and so it's kind of boring for me, right? So I get into other things. I have other things that I'm into, and so I decided to kind of talk about this, um, particularly because I think it's relevant. I mean, particularly so, like for instance, when you talk about sacred geometry and you look at the pyramids, what are the pyramids? Well, the pyramids are, and let me get into that real quick before I go. I'll make a comment on that. Since we're talking about aliens and Oregon, the pyramids are not, the pyramid in Egypt are not tombs. There's nobody buried in those things, I don't think, generally, right? And so, from what I can tell from my study, and a lot of people, like scientists say, I mean, it's not my theory. I got it from just studying, you know, the theory of geologists and archaeologists. The pyramids and scientists and people like Tesla, Nikola Tesla, the pyramids are energy collection devices, energy generators. And basically how they work, the earth itself is a sponge for energy, right? The earth itself is a big ass piece of orgonite, right? You can look at it that way, where it collects the bi the it collects all kinds of molecules and atoms. Is all like being. The Earth is bombarded with all of these atoms, right, from the sun and radiation and stuff, right. And so, like a big ass, think of it as a big ass solar panel, right. So the Earth is a big electromagnetic solar panel, basically, right. So it's collecting all of this energy. And so what they know is they figured out, and Nikola Tesla, if you read his books, you'll figure it out too. He figured it out that you can tap into that energy, and then it's free energy. And so, with the right materials, right configurations, basically you can tap into that energy, and then create free energy. And the pyramids can then, being so large, they direct that energy upward into space. So a spaceship can just pull up in the atmosphere above the pyramids, and they can recharge their batteries. Okay? And so that's what the pyramids do. The pyramids um, are energy collection devices. You see, they're they're generated. Think of them as like a generator, right? That runs off of the energy of a planet. You see. Now this is not my theory. This is the theory of Nikola Tesla, and you can read it in some of his books. Now this is a man. If you don't know who Tesla is, I will not get into that and explain it. You have to go look it up for yourself. Okay. So, but these are his theories, not mine. I'm not that smart, right? But I am smart enough where I can read books, right? And so and kind of reason and figure out that his theory was correct. You see, Tesla has something called Wardenclyffe, where he was imitating. He built this in New York City. It's called. You can look it up. It's called Wardenclyffe. Wardenclyffe, something like that. Wardenclyffe, and he basically was mimicking the concept of the Egyptian pyramids, and they ripped that shit down. When it worked, and when he tested it, they ripped it down. J.P. Morgan, different people, they turned that shit off because he wanted to give free energy to the whole planet. You see, and if Tesla would have succeeded, you wouldn't have World War III right now in the Middle East. You see, the mistake they made in getting rid of Nikola Tesla's technology and trying to control everything was everything getting out of control. And so by not allowing Wardenclyffe to be implemented in the pyramid energy, earth energy technology to be implemented, then you guarantee that there will be eventually World War III 80, 90 years later, right? Because you know, basically you're dealing with resource wars and oil wars, et cetera, et cetera. And with the energy and technology that of the pyramids and basically orgone, call it chi, call it what you want, with that kind of energy, which is non-toxic, if you know what you're doing, then um, it's non-polluting, non-toxic, and free, right? And for everyone, then you prevent people fighting over oil. You see, but you can't put a meter on it, and you can't sell it. So they didn't want that shit around. You see, you want to control a human population. Well, what works for orgone and pyramid energy generators don't. That's not what Wardenclyffe. That's not a good look if you're trying to control a human population and create the monetary petrodollar debt system, right? You have to suppress that technology, and that's what they did. You see, and who did that? Well, that would be Satan, the Antichrist. That would be what you're looking at on your screen, which is a whole nother story, which I'm not going to get into tonight. I've touched on that. You know what I mean? And so, and that's who built the pyramids. You see, all the different wild stories, shit that you hear him talking about the pyramid, who's behind the pyramids. Well, that's who's behind the pyramids, and that's actually in the Bible, right? Prophesied in the Bible. You see, the pyramids are a sign of alien invasion. You see, where they set up camp. They built their energy generators. They set up camp. They basically do run covert, subjugation operations and all kinds of psyops on the humanoids, right? On the planets and shit like that. And that's part of that. And so that's what that's all about, right? Because this ain't the first time, right? The first set of the Great Pyramids was in a place called the Eye of the Sahara. You see, not Giza, and they were destroyed. And those pyramids in Giza are gonna be destroyed soon, right? As well, that's all gonna be destroyed. I mean, not because you don't really need it. I mean, Wardenclyffe was just like the pyramids. They had the same technological concept, so you don't need those pyramids anyway. But they're gonna get destroyed because they were built by an invasive alien species, hostile species, right? So a force is gonna come and wipe those out, as is written in the book of Joel 3, right? Egypt shall be a desolation. You see, the pyramids will be turned to rubble, right? So, but anyway, this, I don't want to make this too long, but that's my talk Orgone. I'm gonna stop it right there. Orgone and some weird experiences I had with Orgone, but Orgone's aliens and Wilhelm Reich.